Enough of the pandemic. Let's get out. It's like this crampedness. Everything is closing in. There's depression. There's these, how in the world are we going to navigate through this, huh? It's Rob and Liz, his morning crew on his radio. Stephanie Baker, Life and Abundance Counseling Ministry, along with us this morning to help us navigate through some of these things. Evidently, she dreams about pigs.
I do.
Yes.
For another show.
Yeah. She dreamed about a pig this morning. It's amazing. So that tells you she's a really healthy person.
Exactly.
It tells us something. It tells us something. We're not sure what.
I'm glad somebody else has weird dreams like I do.
And loves talking about them, too.
Yeah.
Stephanie, we want to find out, because we're talking about the pandemic and that we're going into a year of it. How do you know, though, if you're actually depressed or if it's just you're having a sad or kind of a low day?
Yeah. And that's a really good question, because I think sometimes we confuse something that's lingering with just, okay, well, it's just, I'm kind of sad. Things have been rough, but there is a difference. And there are some things we can look to judge whether or not it is just a sadness with something that's going on in the, immediate, or whether it's something that's a little more long lasting. And if it's longer lasting, that is when we call it depression. So part of what we look for are things like a hopeless outlook, like nothing seems to bring you joy. Even if you're able to go do some things, nothing's really bringing you joy. You're kind of withdrawn. You may notice that life in general, you don't feel a lot of hope about. And that would be easy to do right now, given the things that are going on. Maybe increased fatigue. Depression feeds fatigue. And so the other reason people withdraw is because they're too tired. They feel too tired to do anything. And with fatigue, that just feeds the depression even more, because you do withdraw, and then withdrawal feeds more depression. Isolation is what happens. Also, trouble sleeping might be, I try to sleep. Instead of sleeping too much, I try to sleep and I'm waking up. Typically, when people tell me that they're waking up consistently 2, 3 in the morning, yes, it could be that God is trying to talk to you, but a lot of times what it is that their adrenal system is on overload, and so they have an overabundance of the hormones of cortisol and adrenaline, and it's waking them up out of sleep, and they can't seem to go back, and their mind races. You may also notice things like a change in appetite or weight, and that's very much individual. Some people will eat to self-soothe. Other people, their appetite just goes away. So it's really individual, each individual. But the key there is, was I planning on losing weight? Was I intentional about that? Uncontrollable emotions, and I hear this one a lot in my practice. One minute I feel like I'm fine, the next minute I'm crying or I'm angry. So when those mood swings happen and quickly from 5 minutes to the next, and that's something that we probably want to pay attention to. Maybe seek out some help with that.
Stephanie Baker, Life and Abundance Counseling Ministry, along with us this morning, talking about some of the depression that we've been walking through since we've been in a year in this pandemic once the middle of March hits. Healthy ways of thinking to navigate through this.
Okay, so we might want to consider relying more on truth than emotion. When we're struggling with depression, the emotion is what is so overwhelming to us, and that can become our truth, even though it may not be a truthful thing. And so truth is usually a lot more powerful in the long run. So if we can talk things out, there really is usually an explanation behind a negative emotion. And in many cases, it is an expectation that we had about something that isn't being met. Or, we didn't get our way in a certain thing. We want to try to get outside of our own head, too. And that means trying to connect with others. And I know, and I hear it a lot, FaceTime is not the same thing. Zoom is not the same thing. No, it's not. Granted, because you don't have that physical proximity and that closeness. But it is better than nothing. And it is a means of you staying connected, and we really do need to make an effort to do that.
And I can tell you that because my daughter FaceTimes me all the time. And while it's not ideal, I love that I get to connect with her on FaceTime because I don't see her every day. And maybe once a week, but the FaceTime is like, I like this because I actually get to see her a little bit.
Yes, you get to see the facial expressions depending upon how y'all are doing that. You might even get to see the whole person. I have telecoffee with a very dear friend of mine named Mandy. We make a point to do that really most Saturday mornings. And it's great. She's in her pajamas. Sometimes I'm in mine, we don't care. We just get to hang out with each other because our schedules are so busy. But it's nice. But it is, you have to be intentional about it. You really do. Just like you would be intentional about it if you were meeting in person, right? We just have to shift that thinking. There's also something else that I want to mention too about that physical proximity. It's something called havening. Think safe haven, but that's how you pronounce it, havening. And it's self-hugging. It's a way of self-hugging. And there's 3 ways to do it, but one of them looks like this. So you put opposing hands. I know our listeners can't see, but let me see if I can describe it, right? You cross your arms and you put the palms of your hand on the opposite shoulder and you gently move down to your elbow, and then you just keep doing that. You're kind of almost like, it's like petting an animal, right? But when you do that, what happens is it releases oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin, and those are the feel-good hormones. And it also reduces the stress hormones, the cortisol, the adrenaline. There's a couple of ways we can do that. One of the ways is called transinspirational. I'll get it right. And so what we're doing with that is we're actually exchanging, when we feel anxious with something, we're connecting the positive hormones with the thing that we're thinking, like, okay, I'm worried about my job. I'm worried about my family. But what I'm doing as I'm doing that is I'm literally changing my brain waves to delta waves. And I'm calming myself. So my brain begins to associate, even with that scary thought, it begins to associate peace and calm. So it's disconnecting the emotional distress of it. And so at night when I go to sleep, my brain then is not going to assimilate that the way that it normally would, right? So that's one way. The other way would be that we do affirmational havening. And that would be where we say, and we're doing that self-hug, and we're saying, I am peaceful. I am calm. Right? The Lord holds me in his hand, whatever we want to say. And so at night, our brain brings that in and assimilates that as well.
That's is very interesting. By the way, if you want to see what Stephanie was telling you about, because you can't see it while you're driving down the road listening to the radio, this will be on His Radio TV. So you'll see it on Apple TV, Roku, the My His Radio app, hisradio.com. And we have a specific blog that's going to be posted in just a little bit that you'll see this entire interview on, and even more tips that Stephanie has for you. And it sounds ridiculous to self-hug yourself, but the way that you're describing it, Stephanie, just makes sense.
Yeah, it really does. It's like you give yourself a hug. And I have done this with clients, like walk them through this, where they actually really do hug themselves. And even that releases that feel-good hormone.
I did it while you were talking, and I actually felt better. So, yeah, I think I might do that.
Well, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and people like me. Right? Thank you, Stuart Smalley's. Stephanie Baker, Life and Abundance Counseling Ministry. Thank you so much. Check out the blog at hisradio.com. You'll see the entire interview there coming up in just a bit. Plus, you'll see that self-hug